I have an incredible guest to go over some of the biggest stories in the world with me today, somebody that I owe a large debt of gratitude towards, and we will go through all that. I have Dr. Robert Malone with me. Dr. Malone, thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me on, Stephen. It's my pleasure.
So just some background, Dr. Malone is one of the best researchers in the medical field, holds many patents, created many medical interventions that have blessed people's lives all around the world. He's authored many books. He's lectured all over the globe. I just wanted to start off by thanking you and letting my audience know that during the COVID lockdowns, my family, we had put together a protocol of what to do if we got COVID. And it was a mix of your recommendations, Dr. Zelenko of New York and Dr. Peter McCullough. And so when I got hit with back-to-back Delta COVID and found myself, on the verge of what I felt like was death, those ideas came in handy. Those repurposed medications, I believe, saved my life. So I just wanted to start off the interview by thanking you. The mainstream media keeps pointing us towards the WHO, the World Health Organization, and the World Economic Forum, the WEF. Why? These are unelected, uppity rich, human-hating, lower the population, big pharma, mass control of human population. Why do we give these people any time of day?
In short, the globalists.
Yes.
And the globalist agenda, which is very much wrapped around transhumanism and is very influenced by their projections of the consequences of both robotics and artificial intelligence development. So that's one of the big questions that you're asking, Stephen, and it's good to lead right off with that. And it is something that we address in the book in the latter sections where we talk about the New World Order and the WEF and a lot of the logic behind that and why these propaganda, censorship, and psychological manipulation techniques are being deployed globally. We are in what appears to be a period of transition. And I just want to structure this a little bit. We all understand that we currently live in a modified version of the system of independent nation states that historically grew out of the Treaty of Westphalia. I think it was in the 1400s, which resolved some major wars that had gone on for a long time in Europe. And the Treaty of Westphalia had as one of its core theses that independent nation states should have sovereignty over their own internal affairs. Other nation states should not interfere with the internal affairs of separate nation states. So this created what was essentially a decentralized mid-size network of nation states that were largely reflecting independent cultures, throughout Europe. You can't, which is a great segue into what is it that you're asking this question, what is driving this new globalism? What's behind it? And the core thesis, remember, this is on the back of US. Basically, we did this in Italy, and then we kind of normalized it. We normalized regime change, and we built a stronger and stronger toolkit, all under the logic that the United States, who are the good guys, intervene in these nation states, then to allow the Soviet Union or now Russian sphere of influence, or in particular the CCP, or other parties. Okay, so better us than those guys. And so on the basis of this, we started to justify all kinds of regime change activities, including assassinations all over the world. And that kind of became the norm. And there's something like 60 or 70 different regime changes since World War II that the United States has, it's clearly documented, the United States has enabled. So the idea of the Treaty of Westphalia, that all these nation states are autonomous, sovereign, you don't allow interference in their internal affairs, that's all blown away. We're in a realpolitik world where we have now, it's a multilateral world. It had been the United States dominant, where we have a lot of these separate players. And the thesis that's being promoted largely by the United Nations and their treaty partner, the World Economic Forum, which, by the way, the WEF was assembled intentionally by the US CIA. Okay. Kissinger was the mentor of Klaus Schwab. Okay. Klaus Schwab was put into that position largely through American influence. Klaus Schwab, who actually does have strong family roots with fascism in Germany. Okay.
Henry Kissinger was the mentor of Klaus Schwab. Absolutely.
And there's a video out where they celebrate this and have a good long chat about it, about how great this is. So when you see Klaus saying what he says in his logic of stakeholder capitalism, which is really the interface of capitalism and socialism, that's what stakeholder capitalism really represents. Diversity, equity, inclusion, environmental social governance, these things that we hear about that are now being propagated down into the street level of mid-sized business now, let alone the large ones. This is what's behind Target and what happened at John Deere and what's happening at Harley Davidson and all that. This is all coming from the World Economic Forum and the logic of stakeholder capitalism. It's another thing we cover in the book is what is that logic? How are they built it? What are the structures? And the underlying belief system that's accepted kind of without testing or challenge, and certainly not with any electoral process, is that the network of independent nation states with these kind of power blocks that are aggregating and manipulating them and consolidating them is obsolete. We have global problems now that cannot be resolved by the network of independent nation states. And underneath that, if you pick that apart, what that's basically saying is the reason why the United Nations was created is not meeting the need. Even though the UN is there, it is not meeting the need of enabling solutions through alliances between this network of nation states to solve the big problems. What are the big problems? Climate change, environmental disruption, power, energy, et cetera. We go on and on. Infectious disease aren't being, and remember the World Health Organization is a branch of the United Nations. So the thesis is that the current system is broken. It doesn't work. It doesn't enable the solutions for global problems. And so therefore, we have to create a new centralized global planning. Now I'm using code words, centralized planning equals USSR and Venezuela and just, example after example after example of authoritarian central planning type governments. It never works for a whole bunch of reasons, not the least of which is that it just destroys individual initiative and innovation. If you've got a bunch of bureaucrats telling you what to do and how to do it and when to do it, and doing things like providing universal basic income to everybody, the whole thing goes right down the toilet bowl. And this happens again and again and again in history. But this thesis is not being challenged. This is the thesis behind what is being built. And what's happened is a incremental deployment of this concept for a global government. And now the United Nations and the World Economic Forum are out in the open. They openly acknowledge that they are the intended new global government. And they're working to achieve that end. And what they do, in particular the United Nations, is they use international treaties as their tool. And they use a kind of incrementalism. So at the end of the Obama administration, what we had was a UN document that had been agreed upon by that organization, which is largely dominated by Africa, in small Latin American states, et cetera, the smaller states, many of whom are avowedly, devotedly socialist, and have a sense of umbrage about the big players and how wealthy they are. So there's this kind of envy and resentment, matrix going on here. And the United Nations is currently run, the Director General is the former head of the Socialist Party in Portugal, just to put a pin on it. So what they've done is implement something called Agenda 2030 as a international treaty. And many people that are on the right believe that the Constitution has a requirement for 2/3 majority authorization by the Senate for any international treaties. That's actually wrong. Sorry, guys. It may read that the Constitution says that, but nobody pays attention anymore, and the Senate doesn't do its job under Mitch McConnell. And so what we have is authorization of treaties by executive agreement. Now, there's an intellectual kind of battle within within lawyers that are, international lawyers, about whether or not an executive agreement confers the full legal obligations of a treaty in the absence of Senate authorization. They don't really approve treaties, but they have a mechanism where they approve the ratification process, and then ratification occurs. That's coming off the Senate website. So our thinking about how all this works is wrong. And as Obama was heading out the door at the end of his term, he signed off on Agenda 2030. Now, Agenda 2030 has got 17 basic programs or goals and objectives. And among those, just as one example, there's that people should have universal access to the internet. We should end poverty. We should end hunger, this kind of happy, feel-good stuff. But among them is the statement that it is a fundamental human right for humans to live wherever they want in the world. This is what's behind the open borders policy. This is why we have this flood of immigrants, is because, in particular, the Democrat Party in the United States has bought in to an international treaty that says that it is a fundamental human right to live wherever you want. That's why we have all the flooding of immigrants into the European Union that's destroying that network of independent cultures, et cetera, et cetera. Now, what is this all modeled on? This new world order, this new Great Reset structure. It's a combination of the CCP, the way the CCP runs China, which is a kind of a hybrid capitalist model with a lot of government oversight, and the use of these, social credit system and monitoring systems, et cetera. And the structure that the US implemented in the European Union. People forget that the World Economic Forum doesn't just meet in Davos in the winter, they also meet in China in the summer. So they're very much tied in. And the Chinese CCP has a major role in the WEF and played a major role in appointing Tedros Ghebreyesus, who is the Director General of the World Health Organization, just as an example. So the structure of the European Union, I have been schooled on this by, because I travel so much and I'm hanging out with influential leaders of alternative center-right political populist parties in Europe, et cetera. The way the European Union works, is nation states still exist, and they still have their old democratic structures, courts, legislatures, et cetera. But those are all placed basically at the bottom of a organizational pyramid. Sitting on top of those is the European Parliament, which meets in Brussels and has virtually no power. It's just kind of a shell organization, but it is elected. It's elected by the people from those nation states. And it's a great deal if you're one of those parliamentarians. I've been there, we've spoken there, talked to those folks. They get lots of bennies, they get staff, they get a vehicle, they get all kinds of good stuff, a fancy office, they get subsidized to live in Brussels and travel budgets. What's not to like? Well, they have absolutely no power because all the power is in the European Council, which is appointed, not elected. Okay, so you've got nation states, then you've got the parliament, then you got the European Council, and on top of that, you have the president, Ursula von der Leyen. And that's where all the power is. So if a legislature in the Bundestag, if the Bundestag in Germany decides that they want to implement this law or that law, the European Council can override that. So an unelected appointed group that sits at the top of this pyramid basically controls the internal affairs of nation states. That's the model that they're going to. That's their model for the New World Order. Only instead of the European Council, what you have is the United Nations, which is intrinsically socialist, together with the World Economic Forum, which is promoting this hybrid socialist capitalist model. And then sitting above that, okay, is these global public-private partnerships. So these are the interface between big industry, BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, that, you know, BlackRock is on track to control 90%, I think, of all major U.S. corporations in the United States within the next 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah, they, you know, BlackRock got the contract to rebuild Ukraine. Okay, that's how big they are. They control.
Wow.
They BlackRock can, you know, that and BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard all cross-own each other. Okay, so it's really one great big blob. And they control global politics because they can basically make a decision about whether or not to crash an economy, a national economy. They're bigger and more powerful, except militarily, but financially and basically it's the bond markets that control the world now. It's the financial markets and the traders that control everything. That's how they put a leash on Giorgia Malone, is they basically told her, like they told Liz Truss when she was in the UK, they said, no, we're not going to let you implement these policies that you want to implement. And she was out the door, and Rishi Sunak was in before you could say Bob's your uncle, right? And Rishi is WEF, okay? And Starmer, Keir Starmer is WEF, okay? Yeah, one's conservative, one's labor. I'm sorry, talk about uniparty. It's all the WEF. And so that's the new model, is then at the top of this pyramid, you have these global public-private partnerships that cross-link governmental interests and business interests, which I assert is fundamentally corporatist. It is fundamentally, if you go to the bedrock, look at Benito Mussolini's definition of fascism. This is global fascism. That is what's being implemented. So when you say to me, well, I don't understand, how is this happening? What's happened is financially and through a whole lot of mechanisms, you know, honey traps, the Epstein Island kind of crap, all those kinds of things have been implemented globally. And Klaus Schwab brags about it. You know, we have infiltrated the cabinets of multiple major nations, not the least of which is Canada, of course, is like one of the poster childs. If you want to see the way they want to run the United States, just have a good long peek at what's happened to our Canadian colleagues north of the border. And so that's where this is going. And the Democrat Party is all in on this. They, as you can see, Kamala Harris, right, is the child of a Marxist professor. Okay. Walz is a socialist. They are both socialists. They are all in on this new system, but they are using this amazingly powerful, evolved technology that we call psychological warfare. That combined, it's so much bigger than just censorship and propaganda. It aims to control everything that you read, think, feel, believe, and it's pretty good at it. This is tech that we developed together with the UK largely to use against the Taliban insurgencies all over the world, what's been going on in the Middle East. It's what we used to basically, the United States, through social media tools largely, We're responsible for Arab Spring. We're responsible for most of the color revolutions. That's this tech. This tech is so powerful. For instance, it's been proven. Robert Epstein, not Epstein, in his research group has demonstrated that those little flash things that Google presents to you when you log on and when you do a search, those little transient bubbles that you get of information can be used to sway an independent voter by 20 points. Okay, Google is now in a position where it also elects the president, not just of the United States, but all over the world. Okay, that's where we're at right now with this kind of tech. It's the interface of what's called surveillance capitalism, which is the business model that allowed Silicon Valley to become so wickedly profitable, and modern propaganda and psychological warfare. So you end up in a loop in which they're actually data mining everything that you think, feel, believe, what your motivations are, what your emotions are. I argue that they're basically stealing a part of your soul if you're on the internet, okay? And they package this, they restructure it and package it and sell it in a myriad of different ways as behavioral futures. Amazon does this, so we can see it very clearly. If you go log on, and sometimes you'll be talking to your wife about something, and you'll log on to Amazon, and suddenly it's trying to sell you that thing, right? Or some derivative of it, and you're like, "How did that happen?" You read minds, and if you have Alexa, of course, it's even worse. So, behavioral futures, both targeted at you individually, and also targeted at you as a category of person. That then get fed into this technology of manipulating what you're seeing, what you're thinking, what you're feeling, what you're believing. And it's not only stealing a part of your soul, but it's then shaping and crafting the very nature of your soul. Now, I suspect from what I heard you saying, you're a person of faith. The language of theology in the Bible speaks to this. That speaks to things like the Tower of Babel, etc. I mean, this seems to be a trend in human behavior, in spiritualism, in the spiritual life, that has existed for millennia, and the Bible grapples with it. And this is part of what's behind Revelations and the idea that there will be these major changes and waves that go through. As Michael Flynn says, it's bad now, it's going to get worse, and we win in the end. Let's hope that's the case.
Yes.
But that's what's coming down at us, is this amazingly well-developed tech, like nothing that's ever existed in the world. Sun Tzu in The Art of War talks about a lot of the core concepts as fundamental to succeeding in warfare. And so does Machiavelli, in a different way, in a different language, in a different time. That gives rise to realpolitik, Henry Kissinger, and all that world, right? That logic of pure power and human behavior, and how the prince should behave, right? This kind of really, most of us recoil. This is fundamentally unethical, but that's the way of the world right now, and it's on hyperdrive because of the internet. That's the thing that's changed. Is like, for instance, I wrote a Substack about the Stasi in East Germany. The Stasi had a amazingly well-developed network of internal spies. Basically, everybody was spying on everybody all the time, and they had to survive in Eastern Germany. But they had to handle all this using paper records. They had a massive archive. Eventually, it got opened up. It's a huge building in East Germany that captured all this, but it was still paper records. Some poor soul would have to go, down there and look through the files and figure out this, that, or the other thing. Now it's all algorithmic. Now it's all stored in massive, massive databases, among other places in the Utah desert, and it can all be searched like that. And it can be used to categorize you and how you are and where where you are and what your feelings are. And then it can be integrated with these new financial tools that they're trying to implement, as well as the existing tools, that being the central bank digital currency, to control everything that you are allowed to do. That's where we're headed. And when you ask this open-ended question, what's behind this? It's this logic that has a bunch of structural elements. One of the core structural elements, I'm sorry to validate this conspiracy theory that's been going around, is that there are too many humans. That it's this neo-Malthusianism, the tragedy of the commons, the logic that humankind is destroying global ecosystems, and that we need to prune the bush down to something like 500 million people. And the rest are useless eaters. That's that useless eater language, right? And this is all going to be made possible because of artificial intelligence and robotics. We're basically going to create a new slave class. Historically, we go back to the Romans and Greeks and the great civilizations over time. Those civilizations have been built on the back of slave labor. And now we have automated robotic slave labor and all of the trimmings around it. Like, for instance, right now in the Ukraine, autonomous AI-powered drone warfare is being pioneered. It's being piloted. That's what's going on, as well as the implementation of artificial intelligence to help manage Ukraine, because the working age males have largely been decimated by the war. And so this is one of the strange twists, and this is how this is all going to get rationalized. So they're implementing artificial intelligence to basically enable management of the nation, including all the bureaucracy and everything. And one of the things that's happened is that the corruption is getting eliminated, because you can't go pay off the AI, right? And so this is going to be one of the ways that all of this is justified. Well, we need to have AI because we're incapable of managing ourselves. This is the core underlying thesis. And once we implement artificial intelligence and robotic-based manufacturing, then we really don't need all of these humans. We can have robotic farming and as if that was going to be so feasible. That's the way these people think. They live in a virtual reality, literally. This is the laptop class. These are the virtuals. They're not physicals. And they think that they can engineer their way out of having to have someone come repair their HVAC. And that's the world that they live in. And that's the justification for this new push towards fusion of man and machines. You can see it in the advertising already. Things work best when you pair a human with artificial intelligence. It compensates for the problems of artificial intelligence, and it compensates for the problem of humans. And so we need to have human AI pairs managing the world in the future. And eventually, of course, this moves towards we have human augmentation, and we're plugged right into the AI. Another derivative of this that relates to the surveillance capitalism idea is that one of the things that Silicon Valley envisions in their forward-looking thinking is that all of the metadata, this is what they're extracting from us, okay, without our approval, is our metadata. All of our metadata defines who we are. And so we're going to be in the future envisioned by Silicon Valley and the tech giants, which, by the way, truly are anti-human, many of them. They believe that the human species is obsolete and it needs to be supplanted, needs to be replaced by something in the future, some machine-human hybrid, and eventually just artificial consciousness. But they believe that this new world is absolutely required. It will use less resources. It will manage resources more effectively. It will let us go to the stars. What's not to like, right? But we only have this problem. We have all these excess humans that we got to get rid of somehow. And so that feeds into all the fears. And that part is true. That's documented. That's not a conspiracy theory. Now, whether or not the jab was intentionally engineered for a depopulation agenda, I can't go there. I haven't seen those documents. But the Kissinger report, which is U.S. policy, explicitly lays out an agenda of population reduction. Okay, it is part and parcel of U.S. policy. It's not something that you're going to get either party to talk about right now, but it is a fundamental part of U.S. foreign policy, State Department policy, intelligence community policy, so that was a long-winded explanation, but I hope I've kind of clarified this new world order and the role of psychological warfare and the censorship industrial complex and the vision that the concept of a nation state is obsolete. And one of the main obstacles to that is this antiquated document called the U.S. Constitution, the Bill of Rights. And so what we're seeing on almost a daily basis is more and more examples where the bureaucracy, we could call it the uniparty, we could call it the deep state, we could call it the administrative state. There's a whole lot of word cloud around this, but basically they consider the Constitution to be subject to negotiation, particularly the First and Second Amendments. And we can see this on a daily basis with what's going on with the censorship and propaganda, et cetera. And it's only getting worse. So that's, and the courts back it. The courts, under the thesis of Murray Rothbard, one of the founders of and chief defenders of the Austrian School of Economics, with the Mises Institute, et cetera. So Rothbard, he created the term anarcho-capitalism. He is the one that really has been the strong advocate that the state itself is the problem. But he makes the point that because of how the U.S. Constitution was structured, with these three independent branches, independent quote unquote, they placed the judiciary within the structure of the bureaucracy and the administrative state. And that has a consequence. And now, in his ideal world, the judiciary should have been totally independent of the executive and the legislative branches, but it's not. And one of his core theses that I find just stunning is that the function of the judiciary in a modern, whether we want to call it a republic, a representative democracy, that word cloud, the function of the judiciary is not to ensure the rights of the individual. The function of the judiciary is to support and legitimize the state. And when I say that to lawyers that work in DC and international law, they're always like, oh, no, that's not the case. And then they think about it a little bit and they're like, well, actually, you got a point there. And I think any of us that have been watching the actions of the judiciary during the COVID crisis, where they have basically found any way, they've just done backflips to enable all of these egregious policies of lockdowns, shutting down churches, clear violation of separation of church and state, and the rights to assemble, individual rights in all kinds of forms, and of course bodily autonomy. All of that's been thrown out the door and has been supported. The ability of the state to force your child to be vaccinated, and to do so surreptitiously. In many cases through actions that school nurses jabbing your kids without you even knowing it. And then we fast forward, we have this whole transgender craziness going on. And the judiciary largely, except for in a few states, supports this. California is most egregious. California was all in on censor and fine physicians and kick them out of the Physicians Guild if they will not support the dominant narrative. That's where we're at, kind of, and it's all migrating to this new world in which the whole concept of the Constitution is just kind of a an inconvenient obstacle to implementing the new socialist world order.
Yeah. In our remaining time together, what are your thoughts on RFK Jr., who's very health focused, taking back corporate capture, holding big pharma accountable, separating corporations and government? What are your thoughts on him teaming up with Donald Trump, who seems to have a lot of these same ideas, but has kind of remained quiet about them? This teaming up together, what were your thoughts when you saw them coming together?
So I had endorsed Trump a few days before Bobby did, formally. And I also had the opportunity to do a podcast with Nicole Shanahan, Bobby's VP candidate, who's a fascinating person. She's actually, her profession is she's a lawyer who specializes in artificial intelligence, not to mention the fact that she was formerly married to one of the founders of Google.
Yes.
And that breakup was not friendly. So, and I know Bobby quite well. I was more involved in the pre-announcement of the campaign. And then when he announced, I kind of stepped back a little bit because some of the things that he is focused on in terms of social engineering type stuff, very pre-Carter, Great Society kind of logic, I couldn't swallow. But I like Bobby a lot. I think he's a great man, great leader, has amazing personal integrity and fortitude. And his heart's in the right place. And these things that he has championed, he's lived it. He's lived it with waterkeepers, and he's lived it with Children's Health Defense. And I think he's now bigger than CHD or waterkeepers. He is in a position to really serve as a key leader nationally and globally, to counter a lot of the falsehoods that come out of John Kerry and so many others. Hooking up with Donald Trump, I have, it's a bizarre world, and I now find myself really integrated into some very senior conservative circles. And I actually was the one that brought Bobby Kennedy into the CPAC world by introducing him to Matt Schlapp and getting him to visit Las Vegas during a fundraiser for CPAC a long time ago. What I hear is that despite the endorsement, Bobby's integration into the Trump campaign is still a little sketchy, let alone Nicole's. And I'm not, I guess I'm now pretty skeptical about all politicians, including Mr. Trump, even though I've endorsed him. I think it's a no-brainer when you face, Trump versus Harris. Come on, guys, there's not a choice here. And let's not get caught up in this and that and whether, Operation Warp Speed. I wrote about this on the Substack. It was one of our most popular over the last couple of months. But is Trump really committed to the same agenda that Bobby is in terms of corporatism, in terms of restructuring the government, in terms of medical freedom and health? Trump is very aligned with Wall Street in many ways, and so we'll see. There's buzz. There was buzz about Bobby becoming AG. I don't think that's going to happen. There's a lot of chatter about Bobby being placed in maybe even a cabinet level HHS position, as sec of HHS. That is one version of hell, I think. I don't see how he's going to find professional happiness in managing Medicare and Medicaid and all the other things that go on in HHS. The CDC, FDA, NIH axis is just one part of HHS. And HHS now, with that axis, and particularly with NIH, has new structures that have been put in place by the likes of Adam Schiff that are explicitly intelligence. So the CIA has basically infiltrated HHS in a very major way and has its own shops now. So is Bobby going to be able to make headway in that? I hope so. I hope that he gets the chance. I hope that, it's increasingly a roll of the dice. I can't believe it, what the press has done and what the propaganda has done to elevate the polling numbers, if we can believe those, for Harris-Walz. And so no longer, despite the assassination attempt and everything else, can we consider Mr. Trump a shoo-in. I hope that he succeeds, and I hope that in good faith, Bobby is placed in a position instead of Alex Azar, who's basically a pharma attorney, lobbyist. I hope Bobby is allowed the chain, the leash, to start to implement some of the things that need to be done there. But it's not going to be very fun. We're going to have to drag the bureaucracy kicking and screaming inch by inch out of the mud. And the best thing, the most optimistic thing I see with Trump is that he demonstrated in the prior administration a willingness to take on the globalists. He pulled us out of WHO. Maybe we can get him to pull us out of the United Nations. So I don't think he's going to be too inclined to just sign up with Klaus Schwab and move in lockstep, unlike the other side. And unlike a lot of the other members' leadership of the Five Eyes Alliance, including Keir Starmer now. So, and I can tell you that leaders from all over the world, from this kind of populist center-right position, see Mr. Trump as their natural leader in many ways. Now, we could argue that Javier Milei, who is a full-on anarcho-capitalist, I mean, he is card-carrying Austrian school economist. That's what he is. He's an academic economist. He is on a rip, and he is transforming Argentina. And I may have to learn how to speak Spanish. But beyond that, a lot of people see Mr. Trump as it's almost like he's a vessel that they're filling their hope into. And two things that I heard, 2 years ago, I heard Bannon pitch at CPAC about Mr. Trump was, number one, he's a wartime president. He has fought the bureaucracy. He has seen what they will do to him. He has experienced the wickedness of modern media and psychological warfare in a way that nobody else has. The lawfare, everything that's been weaponized against him, the panty drawer raid. I mean, come on, guys. It just goes on and on. So he's been at the front lines. He knows what they do. He knows how they play the game much more than Bobby does. And so I think Bannon has got a point that Trump is a wartime president, not in the sense of Afghanistan or Ukraine. I think there's a good chance that he would, personally, if Trump gets elected, I expect the Ukrainian war to be shut off like a light switch. But we'll see. But the other thing is, not only is he a wartime president, but he's going to be a single termer. So he's kind of got nothing to lose. He might as well go to the wall on this. And that, I think, may free him up if he has the energy. He does, if you look at him now, he's more trim than he was when he was in the presidency. He's just knocking it out in his golf game. And I should be so healthy when I'm his age. So, I don't know what's going to happen here, but I hope that the alliance with Bobby is in earnest, and that Bobby is given the opportunity to do what he can I fear that even if that comes to pass, Bobby doesn't really understand enough about the wicked ways of DC, and they're going to eat him like a Five Guys burger. That remains to be seen. And I, bless Bobby's heart for even being willing to do this. People ask me, would you go work in DC? And my answer is, I don't seek it. I don't want it. I hate DC culture. But if I'm asked to serve my country, I will do so to the best of my ability. But I would far rather hang out here on the farm, talk to folks like you, write the Substack and the books, take care of my wife and my horses, and commuting back and forth to DC to deal with that wicked world is not my idea of a good time.
Yeah. No, I agree. I agree. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'm going to put a link to your books so that people can check those out. If people want to follow you online, Dr. Malone, where can I push some traffic?
Well, the Substack, which you have identified here in the Chiron, is much appreciated. Substack is what supports us now.
Okay.
There's also the Malone Institute, where you can find all kinds of documentation about the WEF and other things. So you can easily find that. It's a .org. And Twitter, of course, Getter, Gab, Truth Social, but X, formerly Twitter, is our main social media outlet in addition to Substack. The Substack is free. You don't have to pay. The goal is to get the information out. But occasionally we do put in a firewall to try to nudge people to become paid subscribers, because that's how we live. That's now our main source of revenue. And the lovely thing about it is that we don't have big donors. We have a network of between 13 and 14,000 people that out of the goodness of their heart decide, and partially because they like to chat in the chat boxes below our essays, which we restrict just to paid people. They provide us with enough revenue to live nicely, take care of the horses, and we're not beholden to any one person. If there's one of our subscribers on Substack, and this happens all the time, doesn't like something that I say or Jill says, or thinks that the comics that we put out on Friday and Sunday are too rude, the memes, they can unsubscribe, and bless their hearts. That's perfectly fine with me. And it doesn't really affect, because we have a constant churn of more people coming on and people leaving. And it also creates an incentive. We treat our Substack like a business. And so we have to listen to our customer base, and we have to be responsive to them and try to write about the things they want to hear about. So Substack, please subscribe. But if you don't want to be a paid subscriber, that's okay too.
Okay. I'll put a direct link to the Substack as well as your Twitter account. Dr. Robert Malone, thank you so much for coming on. I hope you have a great rest of your day.